Thank you, everyone. So as Arjun mentioned, we're going to switch gears now, and from research, we're going to flip over to clinical. And actually, I was very interested in listening to what Silvana was saying. She said that for her, her focus is to make make the product work for her rather than her working for the product. I'm actually the other end of the spectrum. I work for the product, so the product can work for Silvana and her stakeholders. Okay, so we are all part of the data pipeline stakeholder. We are all here because we are interested in data, whether it's generating data, collecting data, curating it, managing it, or doing analytics on it. But every single one of us is impacted by the whole data-driven decision making. We all need to, at some point, address the challenges that we experience as a result of this kind of what has become a catch-all phrase. And we at Revvity Signals, we've very much focused on how we can iron out the challenges in this data pipeline, kind of from collecting right to the analytics and the visualization part. So from our point of view, to really make those kind of data-driven decisions, you've got to be able to act. The right data has to go to the right person at the right time in the right format, so that they can actually utilize the most the most optimal or the right workflow for their needs. And this is where, at Revvity Signals, under the guidance of David and Dan Weaver, we've kind of done, I think, fairly amazing things to address those challenges. And as David mentioned in his presentation, we want to kind of address your needs through the whole gamut, right from kind of collecting data into notebook, doing kind of basic research, addressing your needs in basic research, whether it's small molecule or large molecule, right to the end where it is dealing with your kind of post-marketing aspects of the data. And we've got different kind of products throughout the data pipeline, and we want to, we are constantly working hard to bring to market these kind of innovative solutions to help you address these challenges. As I mentioned, we want to we want to create these solutions, but we want to kind of create them in as fair way as possible. And what do I mean by fair? What I mean is making your data pipeline, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So these things, really need to be baked into the system to be able to actually have a good, cogent, repeatable data pipeline. And there's a huge impact of the fair guidelines on your data management. If you do it right, it will simplify your process and make it kind of really efficient among cross-functional groups. So yes, research and clinical are different, and even within research, as Silvana pointed out, there are different use cases. You've got so many different stakeholders, but at the end of the day, we're all working towards the same goal. We're sat at different phases, but we are all working towards the same goal. And you want to be able to have, at least attempt to have some sort of a cross-functionality. And the ability to kind of use existing skill sets to expand your data needs, your data science capabilities. So with FAIR, when we've kind of been doing kind of the signals technology, we've wanted to kind of build something where it is findable. So findable through unique identifiers by humans or by machines. Accessible as a single point of truth. So your different stakeholders can go to one place and access the data they need. And not just that, access the data that they're authorized to access. You don't want everyone, kind of have a free for all, at it. Interoperable. You need to be able to integrate with other platforms and actually also do cross-study analysis. And reusable. You want the process to be reusable. Once something is reusable, it is scalable. Once it's scalable, it's repeatable. And you kind of really iron out a lot of the problems that come with people, kind of change, people leaving, coming and leaving, and kind of taking their taking their knowledge with them. So you want a system that actually retains some of the knowledge so that it's actually reusable later on. So this is, very much kind of the mindset we have in clinical and also obviously in research as well. But before we even kind of start talking about technology, I recently came across this article. It was like an interview by the CEO of Vertex, and he was talking about kind of technology and problems and all of that jazz, right? And and it's something he said that actually really resonated. He said, "Don't start with the technology, start with the problem," right? And even though we wanted to see how our kind of signals platform technology can fit in, start to address our clinical needs, we really decided actually we first need to define our clinical problem first before, we jump in with technology. So over here, what are the key clinical data problems that we experience? Timely access to data has always been an issue in clinical. Multiple data sources, so you have your clinical trials happening for the same study, multiple labs dotted all over. How do you bring all that data into one place? Data is complex. It's and the quality is not always great, So some lab somewhere is collecting one type of lab data. The another lab is collecting another type of data for the same study, and they're collecting it in completely different manner. And that in itself kind of generates what I would say kind of an avoidable complexity, but it is something that's a human complexity that's hard to deal with. And the ability to kind of track is very, very important in clinical data. So how do we kind of address these kind of key clinical data problems? And once we kind of, identified the problems, so that again, is something that's baked into Revvity Signals, into our thinking, that it's great to see new technologies, because new technologies are, a dime a dozen, right? But you have to define the problem first. If you don't define the problem, then you become a hammer. And a hammer is just going to try to, kind of land anywhere. If you're a hammer, you see a nail everywhere, right? So you've got to be able to define the problem. And once we define the problem, that's when we're like, okay, now we're actually ready to take our signals platform technology and start to address it into a clinical use case. And from our kind of, thinking, well, we figured that actually the main things we needed to address was data management. So the data is coming from all these different silos. We need to somehow manage it. We need to be able to make it searchable. We need to obviously have an analytics layer, and we need to have collaboration, because collaboration is a really, really important part of what goes on in clinical. Actually, it's a very important part of research, but science can't happen in a silo, and clinical science, it's as true for research as it is true for clinical. So we've come up with our new product, Signals Clinical, that we have just released, and it uses our kind of proven technologies, the Signals platform technology underneath the hood to address your data management, your search, your analytics, and your collaboration needs, all in a centralized platform. So the way it does it, it's got kind of three, you would say it's got the three big functionalities that it's trying to address. So how does it harmonize your data so it is searchable? So for example, it's something incredibly innocuous, but some of your studies might have patient ID as an identifier. The others will have subject ID. If you want to be able to, it's just something really, really simple, right? You want to have all of the studies either just say subject ID or say patient ID. Or another example might be some of your studies have data collected where they're using male and female. The other one, they might be using 0 and 1. You want to be able to harmonize that across, because if you don't, your searching becomes really, really difficult. And these are some of the very, very simple examples. And then, of course, you want configurable analytics and workflows to actually, like Silvana demonstrated really, really well, is that you could have your templates, but every end user's needs are slightly different. In clinical, what we mostly see is that About 70% of the trials are the same, but there are nuances to different studies and definitely different therapeutic areas. So your oncology study will have things that will not necessarily be collected in your cardiovascular study. So one set of analytics doesn't fit everything. So you need to have that kind of nuance and that difference between your different therapeutic areas. And of course, an integrated collaboration. Like over here, I've got kind of different personas, and these are just some of the end users who are looking at your who will be using the sort of system to address their needs. So and how we're kind of addressing it is so we kind of harmonize and search the data, but in order to do that, we have to be able to pull the data from the right sources. So we have some of you might be aware of it. It's like so clinical trial data goes into electronic data capture, so EDCs, and one of the biggest ones is Medidata Rave. So we pull the data in directly from Medidata Rave, or a lot of the data goes into FTPs. We pull the data directly from FTPs, and this connectivity is being expanded for other data sources. Once we have the data, once we've kind of mapped it, once we've kind of prepared it, once we've made it analytics ready, it can be pulled into Spotfire, or can be exported out for a different, if you're using a different analytics platform, to be able to give you the analytics you need. And at the end, once you've got the analytics, the ability to collaborate on it. And how are we in Signals Clinical keeping it fair? So findable. We use persistent and unique IDs to follow through a particular subject. A particular subject could have many different data points. They would have their demographics data, their labs data, their vital signs, their exposure. Tons and tons of data is being collected for a single subject. And it's all in different files. So you want to be able to extract that information for that one subject across these 20 different files, and you want to be able to do it across many different studies, and in the back end we kind of index it with metadata, and we make it accessible by giving you role specific permissions, and actually not even just role specific, we give you study specific permissions, because not everyone is allowed to access data from all the studies. So we kind of are quite granular in that sense, and quite an accessible user interface. So a lot of clinical is done by, in the past has been done by kind of SAS programmers, and it's been quite heavy lift. What we have worked towards is creating a user interface that's actually quite simple. Like hand on heart, I'm not a developer, not a programmer. I can use it. So my brief to my developers was, if I can use it, make it that way, right? I don't want to see a line of code. Unless, people really want to do it, I don't want to see a line of code presented to an end user. Unless, of course, our customers come back to us, we'd like a separate unit, separate API where developers can do this. Of course, we're open to it, but majority of it is for people who want to work in a UI-based, good user interface environment. And of course, integrated authentication. And like I said, the system has to be interoperable. You want to be able to search across your different studies and also with different platforms, and reusable. If you don't harmonize your data to a model, you can't reuse it. You can't do cross-study analysis. Well, you can use it, but you can't do cross-study analysis. So our kind of thinking has been very much that you've got this hundreds of data studies over the course of, I'm sure Merck will have hundreds and hundreds of studies over the course of many decades, and there's a lot of data buried into it, in those studies, and to actually extract the new value out of those studies, you've got to make them look the same. And once they look the same, you're much more able to kind of extract, kind of new value out of it. And, one platform, and like I keep on saying, you want to still keep it fair. And in this instance over here, so on the right-hand side, you've got the end user, the medical reviewer. So this is a person who's a physician by trade, and they are the people who are responsible for understanding, there's a live study happening. And these are the people who are responsible for accessing the latest data, looking at it, figuring out, okay, this subject, the lab results don't look good, or they've had this adverse event, get them off the trial now, right? Because something bad's about to happen. So they have like a, quite a life and death sort of a job in that sense. And it's for these people we need to make sure that we keep our UI very simple. We make it really intuitive, because they don't have the time or the energy or the inclination to really look at code. They don't need to. They're very much like, present me data in a way that I need it presented so I can make these decisions very, very quickly. But these are the same people who will then feed to the data managers or study admins. This doesn't look good. Or maybe, for example, take for example, they're looking at, vitals, and they see a blood pressure, right? They see a blood pressure of 300. Normal humans, unless you're the Incredible Hulk, should not have a blood pressure that is 300, right? So they would go back to the data manager, be like, has this been input wrong? It likely has been input wrong. And then the data manager will feed that information back to the EDC to be like, can you fix this? So these people, so your data managers are very much, I call them end user, data managers are end users, and your medical reviewers are your end users, right? And data managers are responsible for looking at the data quality. But you need all of this kind of conversation, all of this collaboration happening in the same environment, so that your medical reviewers, if they're happy with it, it's good, life is good, let's move on. If they're not happy with it, they're like, ask the data manager, like, get this problem fixed. That something is untoward, and you need to be able to do it in the same environment for most efficiency. Like I said, self-service data management, where you connect to your data sources, you import data, you unify it, and then you access it for getting your pre-built analytics workflows or your customizable analytics in Spotfire. So the pre-built workflows are very much for end users who are like, I want to use the existing workflows to review adverse events. Or your customizable analytics, so people who are a little bit more au fait and they want to actually do their own customization. They might be, I want to build my own custom analytics. So our system allows both type of users, both type of needs to be addressed. But the endpoint is actually the same in clinical. The ability to look at the data and record and communicate decisions and send them back into the loop if something has gone untoward. And then at the end, like I said over here, you've got data manager who checks the data quality, biometrics, will prepare your reports. And then you have your end users, your medical reviewer, your kind of operations manager, your safety analyst. So these are the people who are looking at the medical data and saying something's good, it's fine, something's not good. Please communicate it back to data management, who will respond to issues, get the data cleaned up, clean up the data or get it cleaned up, and the whole loop kind of starts off again, all in the same system. I have a little video here. Okay. So this video over here, I'm kind of showing, I want to show you the different aspects of the product, of Signals Clinical, but how we do it in a fair way. So this is very much from an end user point of view, how you can access the data in Spotfire, directly in Spotfire. You're kind of calling out to Signals Clinical, whereby you are searching for within the study, or across studies, you might be searching for different adverse events or different, whatever attribute you might be interested in. So over here, we're interested in females and, someone who might have an adverse event for different lab measurements. And all of this updated data then gets fed directly and updates your existing dashboard. So you don't need to do the template again. It's just feeding it in, and then the ability to do what I was saying, the review over here. So over here, you're basically saying, okay, I want this looks fine to me, or that doesn't look fine to me, query it to the data manager. But to do all of that, you need to be able to have a single point of access. So this is where in Signals Clinical, the data management layer, so to speak, you're adding your data, and then you're mapping them. And the mapping, again, like I said, is completely UI focused. There's no coding. You put the information design model in. We already propagate it with SDTM, but you can put your own one. And over here, you've got health check statuses at every point. So if anything breaks in the pipeline, you will know, you will be alerted. Okay, something's broken. Maybe your connection broke, or mapping's not right. It will alert you. And once you've done that, it feeds your templates that you've already created for a particular study. It will just kind of automatically feed those templates in Spotfire. So again, findable, accessible, interoperable, and completely reusable. So yes, so this is our newest addition to the Revvity Signals family. Okay, so like I said, three major functionalities: the ability to harmonize and search your data that are actually powered by really powerful visual analytics, Spotfire-based analytics, and a collaborative environment to track your medical review with an audit log as to like who has touched the data at one point. As a medical reviewer, I will touch it, or I might tag another medical reviewer saying, actually, this doesn't look right. Can you tag it? Can you check it? So all the times that someone has touched the data, it is being logged. At what time have they touched that? Did they change the status? Did they add a comment to it? Did it get sent back to data management? Are they going to post it into EDC? So all of that information is being logged in the background. So yes, this is what we have to kind of offer in Signals Clinical with the addition of Signals Platform Technologies. So open to questions.